Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all our witnesses for being here today. I'm glad we're continuing the discussion about WEP and GPO, as I'm committed to make sure that we have a fair solution for all hardworking taxpayers in Kansas, including our dedicated public servants who've been adversely impacted by these two provisions. WEP and GPO were put in place to correct an unfair advantage for a small number of public servants, but instead, Congress overcorrected and created an unfair disadvantage for workers and spouses who dedicated part or all of their careers to public service. Even though a small percentage of Kansans are impacted by these provisions, every instance of WEP and GPO negatively impact a teacher, a police officer, or public servant is troubling. Simply because of the profession they choose, they are bearing the brunt of a policy's negative unintended consequences. But to right this situation, we can't overcorrect again and land back in the original unfair situation. Simply doing away with WEP and GPO returns us back to where 96% of the population funding that unfair advantage for 4% of the population. But ultimately, even the 4% who would immediately benefit from a repeal would lose in the long run. As been mentioned earlier, as it stands right now, in the next decade, if no action is taken, Social Security recipients will start receiving 75 cents on the dollar when the trust fund, whether we want to call it exhausted or insolvent, or basically what it is the trust fund that has been built up when the baby boomers were working, runs out of money. That means that 75 cents on every dollar is what all taxpayers, including those receiving WEP and GPO recipients, receive. Yet repealing WEP and GPO without providing an alternative reform would hasten insolvency by a whole year, which would again hurt all beneficiaries. At the subcommittee's field hearing in Baton Rouge, Louisiana last November, we heard from dedicated public servants affected by WEP and GPO who felt that the Social Security Administration did not provide them with the tools to adequately prepare for retirement. The complexity of WEP and GPO and the lack of clear communication early in the careers of public servants meant that there were many Americans who were unprepared for the lower than expected Social Security payments while they were in retirement. As Bernie Pirro, a retired firefighter, explained at the hearing, if you aren't aware of the impact of these policies, it can undermine your retirement plans when you have little time to adjust. Dr. Blehaus, absent a change in the underlying policies, are there ways to improve awareness of these policies so that workers can better prepare for retirement?
Most definitely, and I would just accentuate the last problem you were talking about, which is that what we do with a lot of people is we show them a benefit on their benefit statements, and then somewhere in the fine print it says, oh, you might not get this amount, and then the amount they get is substantially less. We shouldn't be doing that, right? I mean, we have the ability, since SSA has had access to covered and non-covered earnings records for a long time, to have a WEP that can be accurately projected up front the way their non-adjusted benefit would be. But we most definitely shouldn't be showing them a benefit that the system is not about to pay them. So regardless of what we're doing in terms of the policy correction, the benefit statement should accurately reflect what people are going to be paid.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Gressler and Dr. Fichtner, why are some workers not covered by Social Security?
Mostly because they're working in other government systems, state and local pensions. It used to be that federal workers were also excluded, but they were brought in. So there are still, I believe, about 5 million workers who are in jobs that are not covered by Social Security.
And I would add to that, there's an original constitutional question of whether or not the federal government could mandate a state and local government to contribute payroll taxes or a premium insurance amount to Social Security. And with the benefits on education, I'm a big fan of education. Those who've known me for years know I've been doing financial literacy for SSA and others. The problem with the benefit statement we put out today is even with the reporting we have, we cannot give an accurate benefit assumption for those who might be hit by WEP because it's based on how many years of non-covered employment you may end up having at the end. You can't project, Social Security can't project when someone's 35 with one covered year. Do they have 20 more covered? 15? You don't know until the end. So unless we do something with the benefit formula, we're not going to be able to change the benefit statement. SSA is doing a better job now trying to inform people. Before this hearing was called, a colleague of mine sent me an email with a note because he got a note from SSA saying you might be covered by WEP. And he's like, why did I get this? Like, because you spent 7 years working in Japan as a teacher, and the agency noticed you had foreign employment. So but he didn't know what it meant. So there's still a connection SSA still needs to do on the education side.
Yep. Real quickly, what percent roughly of American workers are currently employed by a job that's not covered?
So right now you have about 5.9 million Americans out of the 21.9 state and local workers who are not covered by Social Security. So that comes to about 4.5% of the workforce.
All right. Well, thank you, and I'm right out of time. I'll yield back, Chairman.